Monthly import and export data for September is out. India's exports saw a fall of 2.6% year on year, contracting to $34.47 billion in September. This was also a significant fall, and there was a significant fall, in fact, in imports as well, which contracted 15% to come in at $53.84 billion in September of 2023 against September of 2022. So year-on-year figure there. The bigger fall in imports has led to India's trade deficit to come in at a 5-month low of $19.37 billion in the month of September, marking a year-on-year fall of over 30% from $27.98 billion recorded in the same period last year. I don't know if we have Kranti with us, if he's still with us. Okay, he's not with us, but come to think of it, interestingly, exports are falling, but it's not a cause of concern because imports are also falling significantly to the point that trade deficit in the month of September has narrowed by 30% year on year.
That's right. It was over $24 billion for the month of August. It is now below the $20 billion mark. It's about $19.3 billion. So fantastic news coming on that front because we've been able to bring down imports so much without exports going down so much. Is the reason why we are finding ourselves in this good space of trade deficit narrowing to that 5-month low. As far as if you're wondering which commodities exports are doing well, electronics, drugs and pharmaceuticals, these exports from India are doing extremely well. Good sign to know that electronics exports from India is doing really well. I'm guessing all those mobiles and tablets that get made in India
have been restricted to a point that there is now a license system starting 30th of October.
Right, that's true. While that is happening, even as we speak, there is also other commodities, the exports of them, which are taking a hit. Like we've spoken about the diamond industry, that is in such doldrums now because of the lack of orders coming in from the Western markets, which are going through a slowdown. And see, gems and jewelry exports have taken a beating. Engineering goods exports have taken a beating. So, organic and inorganic chemicals exports have taken a beating. So, there are categories, of exports that have taken a beating. But thankfully, exports have continued to remain buoyant because of, the ones I mentioned from electronics exports to drugs and pharmaceuticals exports. Even Shweta, the garment export sector is also going through a rough patch. Garment exports are also down. But all in all, what has happened is that while because of a good surge in exports from other categories of commodities, we've been able to keep that export number up while bringing the import number down. And fantastic news as far as the macros of India is concerned, the trade deficit narrowing to a 5-month low. Even as we're talking about inflation coming under the RBI's comfort zone of 4% plus or minus 2%. Just yesterday, we had inflation coming in just a little over 5%, a good 40 basis point less than what the analysts had estimated. So, good inflation numbers, good trade deficit numbers, good macros on consecutive days, Shweta.
All right, good numbers all in all. But, before we move to another story that we have lined up for today, I think it's important to quickly also point at how there's been a concerted attempt made by the government to ensure that even though exports, there's not much we can do because that comes by the way of demand in emerging markets, in developed markets, and that is not in our control. But as far as imports is concerned, we become self-sufficient. So by the way of Make in India, thrust on PLI, and also now with IT imports, we're seeing a regulation of sorts coming into place, kicking into place, where we have a license-like system, which not many people appreciate. But I think everything being done to ensure that imports are limited.
Yeah, imports are limited, but bear in mind, more than anything else, in imports, we have a huge problem of bringing it down below the exports simply because we import oil for our basic needs. So in that sense, it's very difficult to bring the import bill down when we import so much oil. We are completely dependent on imports of oil. So while leaving that import bill wherever it was, what the government has done is try to expand the exports that are happening out of this country. And in that sense, you're talking about electronics exports, which are leading the export front, and which is not a traditional sector. which is doing well for itself in exports. But at the same time, traditional exports from India, like drugs and pharmaceuticals, India is the pharmacy of the world. From Visakhapatnam, we export to drugs and pharmaceuticals to the entire world.
Absolutely.
So those continue to do well, traditional sectors of exports. And then you have new additions like electronics now peaking. So which is what is keeping exports buoyant despite the fact that
Right.
there's so much economic pressure both in emerging markets as well as developed markets.
Absolutely, and we continue to track those numbers. Thank you very much, Krishna.